North Mississippi's ABC station, WKDH. This is Community Edition.
Got to say hello to everyone and thank you for joining me once again for another great Community Edition. You know, it has been good and exciting. So many people talking about some of the great stuff that we talk about, and we got to say thank you for being a part of it. We're coming to you from the beautiful library, downtown Houston, Mississippi, the Mecca of North Mississippi. If you get a chance, stop into the Carnegie Library. There's always room for education, always room to learn something different. I mean, everything from the card catalog now, we've got the computer system, got a little bit of everything, and you can get it right here at the Carnegie Library. And speaking of getting an education, I brought in the professor of all professors today. I brought in a lady that knows the stuff up, down, backwards, and forward. You know, when we talk, we're in the African American History Month. We're into February. And when we talk about things that pertaining to African Americans, you're into a thing called anthropology. I hope I get that right. Mm-hmm. And first of all, I got to say thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
And first of all, I want to know a little bit about you, and then I want you to tell me what anthropology is, and I got to get into some things that went on around this area. Tell me a little bit about you.
I am a native-born West Point girl, grew up on Contra Street. Went to segregated schools, graduated in '64 from 5th Street High School or up on 5th Street in West Point. Went to segregated schools. And my parents, my mother and father, we were landowners. We never rented a house. And so I had somewhat of a different environment. In my 30s, my late husband and I moved to Oxford. And I had gone to college at Mary Holmes, but I was faster than a lightning, honey. Didn't learn a thing. Just made 33 F's on my transcript. And so,
Mary Holmes in West Point?
Mary Holmes Junior College in West Point, okay, that I want to talk about because it's very significant and it has a historical place in the history of Mississippi history in terms of the West Point Civil Rights Movement. So I had gone to Mary Holmes and had flunked out, and they kept letting me back in. I kept flunking out. Had a F in PE. Had an F in P number. Didn't go to class. I was faster than lightning. Mm-hmm. And so when we moved to Oxford in '79, we had lived in, my husband was the headmaster of one of the first free schools for blacks established in 1862 in the Carolina Sea Islands of Penn Center, right out from Beaufort, South Carolina. And so I just went out to Ole Miss one day and enrolled, and earned my bachelor's degree. I was the first person to earn the BA in Southern Culture under Bill Ferris, who had founded the Center for Southern Cultures and later went on to become the director for the National Endowments for the Humanities under President Clinton's term. And Bill County introduced me to a whole bunch of stuff that I had no clue was happening in the South. You know, the emphasis was on Southern culture, the music, the food, the literature, the people, and I just fell in love with it. And so in '85, I earned my bachelor's degree, and then I worked a while at the employment office in Oxford, hated it. And so I went back to school. I remember going to see Dr. Kayat, who's just retired as the chancellor. He wasn't the chancellor then. He had just come from the law school. And I told him I wanted to go to graduate school. Didn't have a clue about graduate school. And I said, I need to work. I'm a single mom, and I have this 10-year-old child. He said, go home. I'll call you in 15 minutes. So I went home, and the phone rang. It was Dr. Kayat. And he says, how would you like to be over there with Judy Trott? That was in the Dean of Students' office. I said, I would love to. Didn't have a clue what higher education was about. So I pursued this master's degree in higher education, and Dr. Trott took me under her wings and cultivated me. We traveled the region together, had a good time at Ole Miss, studied with Willie Morris, Professor Owens, Dr. David Sansing, some of the most brilliant minds of my time. And from there, I took a job in Monmouth, Illinois at a private Presbyterian college, and I was the assistant to the college president and director of minority affairs. So I stayed there for a while, and then I moved around the country and did some other things. And then I ended back up in Memphis, Tennessee, around 95, 96, 97, somewhere along in there. one of the reasons that I came back to the South, to Mississippi, close to home, is because my 19-year-old at the time had just gone off to college, and he was hanging off the top of the house, if that makes any sense. And I had to get back home and get my son because I couldn't afford to lose my child. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Now I'm pleased to report that he's quite an awesome professional light designer, has quite a reputation. And my daughter that lives in West Point, she's almost done with her court report and stuff. So I went back to school when I got Kawasi under control, took him out of Ole Miss and made him go to school up the street. That way I could watch him, make sure he got up and went to school and did what he was supposed to do. And then all of a sudden, I decided I wanted to go back to school, so I went back and enrolled at the University of Memphis. University of Memphis has one of the nation's leading anthropology departments. And there were 10 students in this graduate program, and I was the only one of color. Bill Ferris, bless his soul, was at the National Endowments for the Humanities, so I called Bill, and I said, I want to go into this program here. And he told Dr. Dow, who was the chairman, you better let her in, or we're going to take your money. So they were giving the University of Memphis money, the National Endowments for the Humanities. So I enrolled in this program and had a wonderful experience studying under one of my mentors, Dr. Charles Williams. He taught anthropology from an Afrocentric perspective. And so it just kind of fitted in with my Southern culture background and my training as a student affairs administrator. And I always wanted to figure out how to bring those two together so I could come out of the administrative role and go into the classroom. And so when I graduated in 2009, during 9/11, I was in Chicago on lockdown with the rest of the country. And I came back to Memphis and packed a bag and moved to Chicago. Taught for 6 years at City Colleges of Chicago, and then I contacted the University of Southern Mississippi. They flew me into Mississippi, home, and I spent my first year in West Point collecting civil rights oral history, but they were not looking for any particular aspect. They just wanted the collection. So after I finished that contract, I decided to stay at home. My mother was there, my family was there, and so I stayed in West Point and spent the last 5 years collecting this collection of oral history, but looking at it from an anthropological point of view. Now, you ask me, what is an anthropologist?
What is an anthropologist?
An anthropologist are people that go around the world and we try to study and understand phenomenals.
Are we a phenomenon?
We are a phenomenal in the sense of our struggle.
Okay.
Anthropologists were used, for an example, we all know Margaret Mead.
Oh, yeah.
Margaret Mead did studies in Somalia. She did stuff on sex education, on raising children. Margaret Mead and Eudora Welty, these women were out during the WPA administration, and they was working as spies for the United States government as anthropologists, collecting this information and feeding it back to the government. So we play many roles around the world. We do policy studies. Some anthropologists don't do anything but medical anthropology. They look at diseases and the culture aspect of how these all go together. So what I wanted to do was look at a couple of things as an anthropologist. Let me back up. There's hardly any information available on the Mississippi Civil Rights Movement from the people that actually made it possible.
So it's not all about Fannie Lou Hamer. It's not all about...
It's never been all about that bunch.
Yeah.
There could have never been a Martin Luther King Jr. had it not been for the Dora Adams of the world, the Johnny Thomas of the world, the Joe Adams of the world, the Johnny Wilsons of the world, the late Ronald Deans of the world, John D. Brown. I did mention Mrs. Dora Adams, which she's my hero. Lillian Purnell, old lady named Miss Mary Belk, lived down there in Smith Bottom. Miss Evelina Cosette, Hazel Cunningham and her husband. We just had all of these wonderful people that are in our community today, and they're heroes. And now that Mississippi has mandated that local civil rights history is taught in our public school system, I'm right on point. Mississippi is an exciting place to be about now.
It's a good place, though.
It's a good place.
Spot?
It's a good place to be.
I hear people talking negative. I always say it's not a good place.
It's a lot of negative stuff, but there's a lot of good stuff going on. For an example, in the 1960s, just let me read something. In West Point, Mississippi, in the mid-1960s, a group of some 300 black people were being brought to trial for demonstrating against the segregated policies in places of public accommodation